Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of your boys from the PaperTrails podcast. I'm your host Shamaki, joined by my co-host Mohammed. And today we have a very special guest among us. We've got Omma from the Candid Book Club.
Yes.
How are you? And welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the group. And of course, you are, I would say, I showed him in the notes earlier that
He said our fierce competition. That's what he said.
no, I didn't.
No,
But
he didn't.
I said we're gonna have 1/5 of like what I call the Spice Girls of the book review book like reading club
I love
world.
that, and the girls are gonna
What
love
does that make us? That's what I want to know.
I don't know what we are, but because I've listened to you guys in your reviews,
Yeah.
and I've listened to how you guys break down stuff, and it is, I guess you guys are very true to the name of being candid. Because I remember one time I was about to get the book Butter because I was like, oh, this looks like a very interesting kind of
Yeah, a lot
thing.
of hype around that
Yeah, and
one.
then I listened to you guys' review on it, and I think it was Linda.
Yep.
And she was like, she basically broke it down and said it starts off really good and then it just goes downhill.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Thank you for that. You've
Because
just
it's a
saved me.
big book as well,
It's
so
a
that
big
would have been
book.
a
Yeah.
decent
And I
amount
was
of
like,
time.
this is going to be a lot of investment. So I hope,
We want it to pay off.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that was a good, I don't know if it's rude to say a bullet that was dodged, but you know what I mean? But I trust you guys is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
And
which
so
really
this
means
is
a
a
lot.
this is an honor and a privilege for you guys and for you to be sitting amongst us really,
Thanks,
that are
honestly.
trying to, follow in the footsteps of giants, as they say,
Hardly.
I think you're probably the first people from another book-related online.
Genre.
I don't want to say organization, but group
Yeah.
that we've ever interviewed. Actually,
No, it is.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think we know that many book reviewing.
because I think,
Groups.
like he said, because of that before he jumps into his notes, because of that intro, the video you watch or podcast you
Yeah.
listen to about butters, it just shows like the importance of actually having people talk about these kind of things.
Yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, how do you know what's good to read and what's not good to read and
Yeah.
where to find it?
And definitely I think the relatability aspect of it, like even if you go across, their Instagram pages or their YouTube, it's very much just like a group of friends that are actually enjoying the books and talking about it. Like it isn't like very forced.
Yes.
And I feel like sometimes you need that kind of environment to be able to be like, okay, I'll listen to what their opinions are, rather than it just coming from a different angle of, just protecting every book or maybe just for the sake of it, just
Yeah.
hating on every book,
Yeah. So I think that's something that we do discuss. Like, we don't try to be controversial just for the sake of
Exactly, yeah.
for the sake of it, or to like try and attain virality.
Yeah.
It's, and we can back up our opinions.
Yeah.
But because there is 5 of us, I think it's nice because we do have like different preferences.
Yeah.
So we can kind of argue amongst ourselves as well as to why we did or didn't like
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and it never like really turns to chaos.
Yeah.
Which is nice
No
because
fighting.
Yeah.
Has there
like-
been any fights?
No, never. And
sure?
we actually have just come back from our first holiday together
Oh.
as friends as well. And I was
Yes.
joking that, let's see if the Candid
The infamous.
can last
Yeah.
after like living together technically.
Yeah.
And it was the best time. It was such
Yeah.
like a good, wholesome holiday, and it's just kind of what we all needed. And we initially planned to like do bookish stuff while we're away because it's hard for all 5 of us to get together because of
Yeah.
everyone's schedules. But we just end up having so much fun that we just didn't really get much done.
Yeah.
Even like in terms of reading.
Yeah.
So I brought my book, like we had a train journey, so I brought my book and me and like Jess were reading along, whereas the others are busy making TikToks and just like laughing their heads off
Yeah.
and stuff. So I think that really helps, the fact that we are friends.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we were friends first because so if you don't know, like me and Tanya are actually sisters. So that's how we know each other. Linda and Jess, I went to university with them, so I did my undergrad and masters with them. They stayed on to do PhD together.
Okay.
And then Miriam is actually Linda's childhood friend from like church. And she just put us together in a WhatsApp group. I think she'd individually messaged us like, oh, guys, I'm thinking of starting like a page on Instagram. It's just like reading books that you want to read. There's no agenda. We'll just review it, give your opinion, rate it out of 5. Very simple. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see just like a book, like randomly just taking a picture and stuff because we didn't really want to show our faces. And then from that, it just kind of developed into what it is today. And we thankfully just happened to get along really, really well. Like, obviously, I knew 3 out of the 5 girls from before.
Yeah.
But Miriam, I'd only just met through Candid, and it was just the perfect. Like, we just gelled so well together.
Yeah.
And it's taken time because, obviously, again, you don't get to see each other as often.
Yeah, I can imagine because you only come together for basically reviewing the books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or we did used to have our brunches and stuff beforehand, but again, as everyone's gotten busier with like work and life, and Jess, for example, has moved to Birmingham now, so that kind of just adds an extra layer of like, you know, difficulty to meeting up.
Yeah.
But we have our WhatsApp group, which just pops off every single day.
Yeah.
It's now pinned to the top of my chats.
Okay,
with Linda.
wow.
But yeah, we're always just talking about random stuff. It's not just books, but every
Yeah.
once in a while we'll like get together and be like, okay, guys, what's the plan? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Who's got reviews to go up? Like, you've got these reviews that are pending. Like, don't forget to do this. And I've taken a picture for you, so you just have to write the review. And like, we kind of lift the load equally between us. Sometimes some do it more than others, depending on like, you know, how capable someone is in terms of time and all of that. Like, for example, we've started YouTube.
Yeah.
And initially we were doing it with a company and they were like editing our videos and stuff. But it was becoming really expensive and we don't really make money from this. It's more of like a passion project.
Yeah.
So we've taken that on ourselves. So now I'm doing the editing. And this is something that I've never really done before. So it's like new territory for me.
Yeah.
So everything's kind of just been a really fun learning experience. And it's just like, yeah, being able to talk books with people, and people who are regulars have now become friends and know them on like first name basis. And, you know, we respect each other's opinions.
Yeah.
And I'll know that I, for example, tend to enjoy the same sort of content as Tanya and Linda when it comes to reading. So when they've got a review, I'll be like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, or let me borrow that book. So I tend to sort of gravitate towards like Linda's reviews and Tanya's because I know that I enjoy that content. So I'm always like, let me borrow that, give me that next time I see you. I can't really remember the last time I bought books because we just get given so many now, which is nice, but we sort of still remind each other that we don't have any like loyalties to any publications, to any authors. Like, we have to still remind ourselves to be genuine, and if there are reviews that we post about a book that we didn't enjoy, we'll just make sure we don't tag the author, we don't tag the publisher, so we're not
That's how you get around.
so that's how we kind of get around with still being honest but without trying to be mean about it. And we'll always try and have some sort of criticism that's constructive as to why we didn't like it. It wasn't just like, this was shit and I hated it. It's like, oh, I didn't really relate to the characters. I didn't like the progression. There was no character development for me. You know, I couldn't root for anybody. I can understand that that can be the case sometimes in some stories where you're not really supposed to root for anybody. But like, or we'll say like, oh, the writing was still good. It was easy to read. So that's a plus point. So we always kind of like try and
mix it up.
So like honest without being brutal.
Yeah, and that's good. And to be fair, I wanted to even touch up more on that in depth in later on. Right now, I just wanted to kind of also introduce you guys to our community just a bit more. And to kind of, I guess, talk about some of the stuff that we'll be covering in this episode, which is basically some of the stuff you were saying. So getting to know you guys, the importance of us having a built-up community, the festivals and events that you guys also have, as well as like the book reviews and methods that you touched up on there, and then finally balancing all of that with, you know, your personal lives and trying to slot that in all together. And
we're clearly on the same wavelength because I've like touched on a bit of all of that already without even meaning to.
No, but that's good. But I just wanted to have more headings so people know that this is the subject that you was on about. But I wanted to kind of go just a bit back to the beginning of you guys, you know, bringing it up and starting together. Now, you said you had a friend that was putting you guys in touch and starting the podcast. I mean, the group chat. As you guys were kicking it off, did you feel any like not negative moments, but like moments where you guys were like, this might not be it, this might not work out, or like doubts? Or was it just kind of like, because it was just a passion project that you'd never really felt that?
I think because it's always started off as a passion project, that has helped keep us consistent and kept us going for so long. Because if it was something that we'd gone into thinking we're going to make this a business and try and make money from this, I don't think it would have lasted. Because the market is so saturated in every field that you go into. And I think when it comes to, for example, influencing or those sorts of accounts, it's only really the big beauty ones that make a lot of money. Like there's a lot of money in marketing for beauty. When it comes to book events, like it's just sending out proofs to bookstagrammers or book accounts and maybe pushing for a review, if that. But often it's like, we think you would like this. In the beginning, we would say yes to everything because it was just like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Free books, I've been buying books all my life. But I think we then became a little bit more selective just because we don't want to just have books piling up in our houses because then we just have no.
I was going to ask about that. Like, what's your bookshelf looking like right now?
Yeah, honestly. So I'm married and my mother-in-law recently was like, oh, Omma, you've got this stack of books. I was like, yeah. She's like, have you read them all? I said, yeah, like some of them. And she's like, okay, so are you going to get rid of them? And I was like, no. She went, oh, okay. And for me, it's like almost like decor at the same time. But we do try to donate books. Like I've got like a little free library near me. So anything that I've read or if I've got like doubles of or stuff that I know that I won't reread, then I'll just drop it off there. And, you know, we try and get around it that way. Or if anyone wants something and they just message us, we're like, yeah, here. So that's how we kind of get around that. But yeah, in the beginning, it was just like, oh, this is so exciting. I think the first ever book we got for free was, I think by Faber, and it was called Don't Skip Out on Me. And then that's when we all were like, we all have to read it. Yeah. And we all did our review and we were posting it and stuff. And we were lucky because we all genuinely loved that book. And I think even now, if you ask, like, what do you recommend? And I think especially for a guy, we always say Don't Skip Out on Me. I don't know if you guys have read that. No. It's such a great book. It's by an author called Willie Vlautin, and it's about like this boxer in the South in America and who's sort of got identity issues and stuff. Yeah. But it's so good. I just can't get over it. And I think people who watch our channel or sort of maybe even know us in real life probably are bored of hearing us talk about this
and I heard
book.
that he specifically handed out a book to you.
Really?
Yeah, she was a chosen one.
Yeah, I got a private DM like on my personal account to be like, Omma, the new book is coming out. Do you want a proof? And I was like, yeah. And I'm sending it in the group chat, and everyone was like jealous of me. And I genuinely thought there was going to be like my name in the acknowledgement somewhere, but there wasn't. This man is married, by the way, and he lives in America somewhere. Yeah. So that we were lucky that we actually got something that we really, really did love. So it wasn't disingenuous for us to rave about this book and post about it and stuff. And then we started to get more and more publishers were reaching out to us. We had agents reaching out to us. We even had some authors, and then we built some connections just through like genuine ways. For example, Elizabeth Day, she had her book How to Fail. And Mimi, I think, used to listen to her podcast anyway. So when we got that one, she read it. She really enjoyed it. Yeah. She was one of the first to like review it, which Elizabeth happened to see. Yeah. And she then messaged us to say thank you. And then we have sort of built like a nice little
connection,
sort of connection that way. And she's the reason why we were on Sky Art's first book club. Yeah. So that was really nice. Like that just happened by itself. Yeah. You know. And then, for example... and
then how long do you think, sorry to cut you off, how long did you, like, take between you guys starting off and then this sort of happening?
It did take a while. Yeah. So we started in 2016. Yeah. That's when we started, like, doing our reviews and stuff. And then in 2019, I think we first started to do in-person book clubs. Okay. And we started at a WeWorks because Mimi had an office there and she had a free space, and they were doing sort of like, they would allow events. So we had the space for free. Yeah. So it didn't cost us anything. And it was a good central location. They were providing drinks and snacks and stuff. So it was like, oh, perfect.
Not too bad,
Yeah, so we had that. And I think our first ever event was Eleanor Oliphant is perfectly fine. So we did that one, and it was a good one to discuss. We did that for a little while, and then 2020 at the start, we had Alia Morrow, and we did her book in person with an author. She was the first one we did with an author. Okay. And then lockdown happened, and we were like, okay, what do we do? And then we started to pivot to Zoom book clubs. And the good thing about Zoom was that we could have a lot of authors present. So we would just contact the author to be like, we're doing this. Are you free? And a lot of them were free. So that's when we got to have a book club with, for example, Elizabeth name is. She wrote My Dark Vanessa, which is like about the sort of Me Too movement and sexual assault and stuff like that. And that was a very deep, heavy book, but it was very impactful. And she was in America, so that's how we got to connect with a lot of like American authors, which wouldn't have happened in person. And then we just continued to do that over lockdown. And so we sort of built, like the following just kind of built and built.
Yeah.
And then at the end of, I think, 2020, we did our first one in person at Piccadilly, and then we've just been there ever since.
Yeah,
and it's just like a nice, convenient space because, again, it's very central. It's easy for a lot of people to get to. It's in the evenings, which is usually 7 p.m. So, like, after work, people aren't waiting around for too long before they come. And it's just been such good fun. And I always, like, that's where I met you.
I was just going to say that. That's why I went, and it was, it was in a beautiful location. Obviously, Piccadilly is always nice. But one thing that I also realized was just how strong your community is. Obviously, I went there. It was Sarah Jafari that had her book, and then everybody that was sitting around. It wasn't. I thought it was just going to be like some sort of like just panel. But then it just became an open discussion, and everybody was putting in their pieces, and the author was contributing as well. And I was like, wow, this is a proper book club. I was like, this is serious, and that's what I kind of also wanted to touch up on, because you said around that 2020 mark where things were building, the steam was going and the community was forming, like just how much, like how it felt for you guys to then see in person people coming down to be able to be part of the discussions that you guys were holding. Like, how did it feel the first time seeing that?
Like, I think the first few times that we did it, we were still really nervous if people were going to turn up. Because you have to pay. And it's not a huge amount. It's like £8. And that's to just help with running costs, but also just to help ensure attendance. Because we've done events where it was free. People book tickets and then they don't turn up because it's a free event and they haven't really lost out anything. So this kind of helped to ensure that people would actually turn up. Without it being like extortionate amount, because it is a really nice atmosphere. It's like you're meeting like-minded people. I think what's good about a book club is that at the very least, you know that people are there for the same reason and you're going to have something in common. So it's easy to like mix with people. And a lot of people who have come to the book clubs have come by themselves and they've now formed their own little community within our community. And they're friends and they follow each other on Instagram and they meet up and, and they chat regularly. And it's really, really nice. It's like super wholesome. So I think that's always been really encouraging. But, the way that life is set up, it's so easy to forget. And then you get small reminders of someone just saying a kind word, or like even the introduction that you gave is just another reminder that it's worth it, what you're doing like all the time that
Especially
you invest.
I feel like because it's online and all of this stuff, most of the time you just see like numbers or like a certain amount of likes. But when you actually see that number of people in a room, then it's a whole different feeling.
Like, it's so easy to get caught up with numbers when it comes to social media. But luckily, because there's 5 of us, we're just a sounding board for each other. And one person might get caught up like, oh, this post is doing rubbish. I don't know what's going on. What's happening with the algorithm? Have we been shadow banned? All of those types of conversations we've had in the past. And then someone else is like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. That's not why we're here. That's not, the reason for it all. And then we all sort of settle down on like, you
can find comfort in each other.
And now I think we've just stopped looking at numbers. Like, for example, Instagram, we only have, like, in the grand scheme of things, if you think about it, 20 plus K followers isn't a lot. But our likes are like not even 10% of that. And if you look at it in terms of numbers, it can be a bit disheartening. But then it's not really about that for us. It's just like, if even one person takes that review on board, if one person is like, oh, I really enjoyed that, or thanks for that recommendation, or thanks for letting me avoid or dodging that bullet of a book, that again it just makes it worth it.
Even then, like the beautiful part of that is it's also kind of relative. Because for us, for example, those numbers would be like, wow. Do you know what I mean? But then I think sometimes it's nice to also be able to do it with people, to kind of just remember where you've kind of like also kind of come from, and like how long it took you to kind of get to that. And I feel like what also really reminds you is the community, are the people, are like you were saying, the nice words that people say and people do. And I wanted to know, like, was there a proper standout moment that someone said to you guys that made you feel like, yeah, let's keep doing this, this is right?
Yeah, so it
Or
was
did you have any doubts at any point? Or
Oh, we've always had doubts.
Yeah.
Like, again, as I was saying, I think when lockdown sort of happened, when things were dwindling in terms of like likes and reach and post, and we're not really growing, or it's taking ages to even get an extra 100 followers, for example. Because in the beginning when we started, we were like, okay, because there was 5 of us, we reached out to all of our family and friends and were like, follow this new page, you have to follow. We didn't follow anybody back just to help get that ratio going, because obviously people like... when they look at an account and they see the ratio, you know what I'm talking about. It's like those kinds of things. So we use those tactics in the beginning. I think I have 4 sisters, and then obviously including my sister Tanya, who's part of the book club. So there were some events where I was like, guys, you have to come. You know, the numbers are low. You need to come, support. And luckily we have friends and family who were just coming and helping and supporting, and or we'd like send our posts to our family and friends to be like, oh, just like this post, just comment something, blah blah. Because you know, unfortunately that is the way social media goes. We do a lot less of that now, just because in terms of in-person events, we know that they're good. I think we've done enough of them to know that they are good.
Oh, and they are. I can vouch for that.
Like, it's always a fun, interesting discussion. It's always nice to have the author there, because it's not an interrogation. It's not an interview. It's more like they get to listen to how their book has been received, how their characters have been understood, and they can come in and counter it with something if it's incorrect. Or a lot of times it's like, I didn't even think about that. I didn't realize that that's how it came across. That wasn't my intention, but that's so cool that you guys think this way. So it's always really, really nice.
I can imagine. I feel like if it was me sitting in that author seat, like especially like, for example, the way they were discussing Sarah's book, and it was like many different people having a conversation. She didn't really have to say much. I feel like I'll probably just cry. You know what I mean? I'll be like, oh, wow. I mean,
it would be like
I
very
didn't even mean that.
but
people have like internalized it and said, no, but this is what he meant. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, I agree, you know, and it would have been such a beautiful... I feel like it's the nicest thing for any author to be a part of. Just to have people dissect their book and genuinely enjoy it so much that like many people can talk about it, you know?
Just to touch on that point, exactly that. Like platforming that author, I think is very interesting, because I think a lot of us, like growing up, when we don't have access to authors in that way, especially like back in the day, it wasn't like this now. Like you had these questions about why this part of the story was made here. Like the story might have been great, and then all of a sudden there was this thing here. Like, was that their idea? Maybe it could have been the publisher who said, nah, take this out, put this in. Like, I think it's really nice to give them that platform to also be human, right? Not just the name on a book.
And get an inside scoop as to their process. And a lot of times we've had authors just say that this has been the best event that they've done, because they end up doing a lot of promo stuff where it's a lot of spoiler-free discussions. It's very much just an interview. They can't talk as openly, whereas we tell everybody, make sure you've read the book beforehand. If you haven't, that's fine, but just be aware there will be spoilers. So if that's a problem for you, like, you know what to expect. And because we discuss it with such enthusiasm, and everybody gets involved. Like, we've had a lot of people who come for the first time and maybe they're a bit shy, and we just explain how the book club works. And we're like, don't worry, we won't be picking on you. Like, you have to sort of volunteer yourself to speak. And if we think that you look like you've got something to say, or if you're discussing it quietly with your friend, but once they hear other people talking, they naturally, it just gives them the confidence to like speak up as well and just give their opinion. And it's really nice.
And the nice thing is, because it's all really subjective.
Exactly.
So there isn't really a right answer. So you might have just read the room completely different, but that's fine. That's actually a new perspective for everyone that's there.
Because I think we bring our own experiences to a book when we're reading it, especially when it's fiction. So we all perceive things differently. So it's nice to get a different understanding or perspective of something that's happened, or a character, or how they read. Like, for example, we've got Elizabeth Day's book, Magpie, and in that he calls her like sweet girl or something like that. And we all read that as an ick, and we were like, that's so just gross, cringe. As a grown man calling his partner like sweet girl or something like that. And she was like, oh, I thought it was really endearing when I was writing it. Like, I didn't realize that that's how it came across. And it was like something small like that. It's just an example. So
it's actually a pretty good example, actually, to be fair.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of stuff that writers have written that they probably didn't know how
Yeah.
it's come across.
Like for me, one of my biggest annoyances is the word giggle.
Yeah.
I hate when you're reading like any kind of story and the woman giggles, because I just think only toddlers giggle.
Yeah.
Children up to a certain age, like
Yeah.
laugh, cackle, whatever.
Every-
Use
I giggle
something
over it.
else.
Yeah.
But in every sort of romantic setting, it's always like she giggled.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me sick.
Yeah. It's always the woman. Why can't the man giggle? But I had a question. So I think it's already in Shamaki's notes, but I really hear about like he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you about like the actual intention of why you guys started the book club, and also in terms of the dynamics with the five of you. He said the Spice Girls of the book of the book industry, but how did you guys like manage that dynamic between you guys in terms of like actually starting up yourself and then bringing up all these different people and now even authors as well?
Yeah. So I think the reason it started was because at the time, Instagram it was very much like just the highlight reel. And we personally didn't really follow any book accounts and stuff. And we just wanted to add like a different corner to Instagram and just bring something different. So that's the reason we started. And then once we had our page, that's when we realized how big Bookstagram actually is. So we were just in our tiny little corner of Instagram, just reading and reviewing books. We just started as a review page.
Yeah.
There was no like, you need to read this or that. It was just read whatever you enjoy. You've read vastly anyway, so you can just review even old stuff that you've read, whatever you want. And that's how we started for a long time. And again, like we could get caught up in the numbers game, but then we would all just reassure each other. So it started off for that reason only, because we all love to read individually. It's something we've done growing up. It's a hobby that's so easy to fall by the wayside because life gets in the way. And for a lot of people, like they would enjoy reading as a child or as a young adult, and then once you start working and just life and exhaustion gets in the way, like it's hard to sit down and like read a book, because you still have to concentrate, whereas when you're watching TV you can let your mind wander and stuff like that, or you're just winding down. So that was kind of the intention that we started with, and then it sort of developed because we were then like, we noticed that obviously with the rise of social media and stuff, we did want to encourage more people to read, because so many people would say to us that, oh, I loved reading as a kid and I've just kind of not been able to get back into it. So then we'll try and give them suggestions of like books they might read that they'd enjoy, or something easy to get them back into it. Because a lot of times, even for us, like we get reading block where we just can't, like we're just so overwhelmed with stuff that we just can't get into something. And then we'll read something that was like really fun or light, or maybe even something like super deep and heavy that was very educational, that brings us out of that, and then we're back to like reading again. So that was kind of what we wanted to do, to just encourage people to get reading again, because like although we tend to read a lot more fiction, just naturally is what we gravitate to, like we still enjoy nonfiction, but also at the same time, like you can still learn so much from fiction. When people think of fiction, and I feel like especially men, when they think of fiction, they just think of like chick lit and light-hearted books and, you know, romance, and there's so much more to it. Like you can learn about a whole history based on a fictional book, which although it's not historically, but maybe it's not exactly accurate and those people don't exist in real life, but those stories are very true. You know, and the first example I think of is Susan Abuelhawa's Mornings in Jenin, which is based on like the Nakba of Palestine, and it covers like four generations, and that story is probably so common within so many families that it's fiction, but you're still learning, and it's still so impactful, just as impactful as reading someone's actual memoir. So that's what we always try to encourage people to do, because there's so much to learn. And we always try and say that, you know, reading helps expand your boundaries, your way of thinking. It stops you from just...
introduces you to new ideas.
Exactly. Like,
and also I always say it leads to like, especially I feel like you can tell somebody reads a lot by just how empathetic they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's I feel like, especially with the way all this red pill stuff and men stuff, it's a lot of it just comes from a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
And they don't want to read, I guess, fiction for the reasons that you also mentioned. But like one of the good reasons as well is empathy.
Yeah.
And I feel like the moment you're reading a character and you're following the character, you're naturally empathizing with this person, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, and knowing, okay, you know what, some people have struggles in a different way, and then you can understand how to then navigate that, you know? Even if you don't agree with the person, or like that's how sometimes some people agree with like villains in a book, you know.
We've got a running
Especially when you
joke.
get an origin story.
But yeah, and then
I
some
can
people
see
are
how
just
that's
like,
happened.
I get the actions are weird and wrong,
Yeah.
but I get where the anger stems from.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So even like someone that you might despise from across the room, you can kind of empathize with their reasonings for why they are.
And it's just like a reminder that you're not going to meet everybody in life and love them straight away. You're not going to get along with everybody. You're going to get people who are different to you, who think differently. And it just helps to build more tolerance. And it is through things like reading, because you're, again, just educating yourself. You're getting to know different perspectives. Like usually in a book, you've got the main character and you're supposed to follow that main character on their journey and understand how they've got to where they are and empathize with them. That might not necessarily always be the case, because again, you might bring your own perspective to it, but it still helps you to think about it, understand it. And that's why we like to discuss it as well, because it brings another layer to it. Like the girls laugh because they say that I'm always unsure about a book. And then once we've had the discussion, I'm like, oh yeah, guys, I loved it. Because you just get that added layer of like people's perspectives and it changes the way that I thought about something or perceived something. So I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, another shout out to my book club.
That's how good work is.
Did any of you guys have any aspirations to write? Or
No,
still do?
people say that all the time.
Yeah.
But nobody in the book club is in the publishing field or anything adjacent. Like me and the girls, we did chemistry for our degree and masters. Mimi also did like a science undergrad, but she has her own business. My sister is working in like the civil service. The other two girls are working in like medical writing. So Jess is in like medical writing, so journals and things like that. And then Linda's working in another medical type field.
You don't have to say too much.
It's like one of those
medicine.
Chandler Bing type jobs that I never quite remember the title of the job. So yeah, none of us are in that space. And I think that that's what helps keep things fresh for us as well, because we don't have those sort of politics involved. And people assume that we're budding or wannabe writers.
No, because also the way you guys review books, because I mean, I've dabbled in writing, I would say. But like sometimes if I'm writing something or thinking of writing something, I will go back to some of the stuff you guys critique. Because you guys do critique as almost as if you were writers. So to be fair, that was a good question, because I didn't even know.
When I read a really good book, I'm always just like, how did they do this? How did their mind build these characters and this story and it to follow this plot line? Like, I think about writing in a very abstract, like, what would it be like to be a writer or to be an author? But I just can't do it. I don't think I have that sort of mind. I feel like you either have it or you don't, or there's like stories you want to tell, but I just don't think I could put that together. I'd need a lot of coaching and help. So, I don't ever see myself becoming an author. It would be great. I know I'd have the support of like everybody, and not just me, like if any of the girls, like Linda, for example, she has a lot of stories. Like when we're all out together, we're always laughing at her stories and stuff. And we always say to her, you need to write a book. Like she does such a great impression of like her mum, who's Egyptian. So like, you know, we get that ethnic sort of banter and stuff. And we're always like, Linda, you need to write a book. Like even if it's just the sayings of like your parents and stuff, it's so funny. And it's just like a joke that we have, but no one seriously is considering doing it. Whether it happens or not in the future, like who knows, but it's not really the reason why we kind of went into it.
And that makes sense. And I wanted to kind of talk about the festival that you guys did.
Yes.
Which was amazing. Well, from what I saw on YouTube as well, I was gutted I couldn't go. But it just felt, again, I think maybe it's just you guys. I feel like you guys maybe don't give yourselves enough credit by just how welcoming you guys are in your events and spaces, because it doesn't feel like it's you guys and then everyone else coming to watch.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like you guys open the door for everyone to
Yeah.
even have access to the
And
authors
that's
and all that
exactly
stuff.
how we want people to feel. So
Yeah.
we are all women of color.
Yeah.
We've all come from similar sort of backgrounds, working class backgrounds and stuff. And although we don't identify ourselves as a like a book club that only reads people of color,
Yeah.
naturally that is what we end up gravitating towards.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because we don't box ourselves in, it allows us to read anything and everything. But when it came to our festival, for example, we didn't consciously say that we're only going to get writers of color.
Yeah.
But that's just how it worked out, because those are the writers that we wanted to platform.
Yeah.
Like, we always try to platform a lot of debut authors, because we know just from speaking to people how difficult it is to get that publicity. Like,
Yeah,
when
to
it
push
comes,
the book out.
when it comes to publishers, they have, and we still don't understand the process in which they pick the few select books that they're going to put all of their marketing spend towards, and everything else kind of just falls by the wayside. Or it's the expectation is on the author to do their own marketing, to push it out, to go to booksellers, to make social media posts. And I just think an author and a writer isn't necessarily an influencer.
Yeah.
They don't know how to make that sort of content. They are not going to be maybe that Gen Z or Gen X or whatever, which is very familiar to them. So if we can help, especially when it's a book that we really enjoy and we love and we think that people should read it, we try and do that for them. So again, with the festival, like for example, our debut festival panel, it was all women, and they were all women of color, and they all had different stories that they had written, and it felt too short. That debut panel was so good. And then the second panel we had was a panel on masculinity in literature, and we had 3 men across different backgrounds, again having a really fantastic discussion. And then the last panel, because we started off with a book club in like typical Candid fashion. We had those 2 events. The third event was Palestinian diaspora. And again, we had an author who'd come from France and a Palestinian author who'd come from America to join us, especially for this. Because again, that's something that was important to us. Palestinian literature is really important to us. And it's our way of like giving back and doing our bit. And then at the end, we had a panel about partition, because it was like the 76th year, I believe, of partition, and we had read a fiction book called Home Fire. Was it called Home Fire? Don't quote me on that, I might be wrong. But we had a book by Sarah Hussein. So she wrote a fiction book which had the themes of partition running through it. And then we had Misha Hussein, the broadcaster, who had wrote a non-fiction book on her family history, which covered partition. So it just came together so naturally. And we loved every single author. Every event was just a huge hit, and we were so happy at the end of it. And there was a lot of work that went behind it, like trying to...
I can imagine. I was going to ask, is it like, do you specifically choose everyone, or is it sometimes like a publisher might put something in front of you guys, or was this like your whole idea, like you guys were like, let's do our festival?
All us.
Okay,
so we were like, okay, what do we want to do? And then I think someone came up with the idea of like a debut panel, because that's always fun. People always want to know and hear from, because maybe there's like budding authors in the audience, so they always want to hear and the experience of like debut authors. And plus, again, it's our way of platforming them and allowing them to talk about their books. And we said to them, because we did Zoom calls with every single group so that they knew exactly who each other were. We had their books sent to each other so that they could be familiar. Even though it wasn't like a test, they didn't need to read anything. There was no specific questions. But it's just to allow them to be comfortable with each other so that the vibe was so good on the day. Like, they were comfortable with each other, because they weren't just new faces meeting 5 minutes before in the green room, you know?
And having to gel.
So small things like that is what we did behind the scenes. But again, it was just like we decided on the panels, the topics. We're reaching out to authors. This person's not available. That person's not available. This one has a schedule clash. This has this. So it was a lot of like, okay, who else? And it was difficult. At some points, we're like, oh my God, I don't know if this is going to happen. What do we do? And like, for example, Misha Hussein, she was busy. She had another event on the same day, but two of the girls went to another event of hers and then just sort of almost accosted her, like, can you please come? We will put your panel at the end of the night so that you're available. And gracefully she said yes. And it was so nice because she's just so charismatic, that woman. You could just listen to her. She has the best voice as well. So it was like the perfect end to such a great event. And it was tiring. We finished at like 9, and then I think we all went for dinner, and then we invited some of our regulars and the authors to come for dinner with us as well. So again, it was another way of like getting to know everybody and also saying thank you to the people who show us support. And it was just the best day ever. And the next day felt so surreal that we suddenly just don't have this big looming event to like think about and discuss and, you know. And we're getting ready to hopefully do it all over again. So if people have suggestions of who they'd like to see, we're always open to that. Because sometimes like we do worry about being in an echo chamber where we're all just thinking and saying the same thing. So it's always nice to get outside perspectives of like what people would want to hear and see. So
yeah, of course. I mean, I guess that's one of the many challenges. But I wanted to also know like the challenges of like keeping all of this going with your personal lives and with work, because obviously this isn't your full-time thing. Like you were saying, you guys aren't really making a lot from it either. So it's just purely passion that's pushing this. And I was just like, how do you guys find the balance between life and all that you're doing?
It's hard. And again, I think we're so thankful that there's so many of us, because there will be times when someone is doing a lot of the heavy lifting compared to other people. Like we discussed before, I have a chronic illness, long-term condition. I also have mental health struggles. And there's points where I'm in hospital for a few weeks and I physically cannot help. So in those periods, the girls will take over. It's always like, don't worry about it. Don't be stupid. If I'm apologizing, I'm really sorry, I can't do X, Y, Z. Don't be dumb. You just focus on yourself, getting better. And again, if the girls have a really busy period at work, we will sort of cover someone like, okay, because Linda generally sort of deals with the day-to-day of stuff because she's just that sort of person. She's very motivated, go-getter. She's the one that kind of keeps us going. But there's points where she's really busy at work and, you know, things are really overwhelming and she'll tell us, and that's when one of us will step in like, okay, cool, what's going up next? Who's posting what? Do you have a review? Do you need help? What's everyone reading? You know, and we try and just motivate each other to just keep going. And as we've said so many times, because it is a passion project, that's what really helps fuel it. Because if there were other motivations that are just not as genuine, it's so easy to and like same with you guys, because you're friends first, it's so easy for you to push each other along. Whereas if you maybe were just co-workers and you didn't have that personal level of like connection, then you might tiptoe between saying like, guys, you know, in our case, you need to step up a little bit, like you're slacking. Can you help out more? But because you are friends, you can say like, listen, I need a little bit more help. There's personal stuff happening. And you can tell them what that personal stuff is.
And there's no judgment or anything.
Exactly. So that always really helps.
Also, I was going to... I guess I'll kind of end it with 3 questions. Okay. Firstly, actually, let me just say a statement beforehand, because I've been following your Instagram page, and obviously you're very open with your stomach and your health conditions and everything like that, and just how positive it is, your page, like everything that you're going through, and still continuing to push positivity, which I find absolutely amazing with everything that you're doing. And I guess it definitely helps with the friends that you have. And so on the friends is the first question, because we've mentioned like the spice, you guys like the Spice Girls like 4 times now. Could you say each spice which one they are? Who's posh one? Who's the mean one? Who's the sports one?
I'll pick some of the easier ones first. So I'd say like, for example, Tanya is Baby Spice, because she's the baby of the group. She's the youngest. And we do sort of want to take care of Tanya. And obviously I'm her older sister as well. Although she doesn't really claim that. I'm 5 years older, but she acts like I'm like
you know,
age mate.
siblings,
So yeah, she's definitely Baby Spice. I would like to think I'm Posh Spice only because she was the one that I always loved growing up. So I'm going to claim her for that reason only.
Yeah, we can't challenge you. So
Yeah, exactly. Who's left? I'd say Jess is Sporty Spice because she's the one who does like the hikes and the walking and the marathons and stuff. And her husband is like a marathon runner type thing as well. So I'll give her that title. So it's between Scary and Ginger. So I would just say Linda's Scary simply because she loves leopard print. She loves a print. And she's also the most motivating out of all of us. Like, I don't think... I think she gets a bit embarrassed when we sort of always give her these accolades, but Linda definitely is the driving force who helps to keep us going. So I'd give her that title. And then I'd say Mimi is Ginger Spice because everybody loves her. She builds a fan club wherever she goes.
Yeah.
You know, anyone who meets Mimi is just knows how incredible she is. And so I think we round each other out quite nicely. So
Yeah,
I think that worked out well, actually. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope they
like it.
Yeah, if you asked us, it would be the Chuckle Brothers. That's what I would say. To me, to you.
And to be fair, finally, I would say if you were to give us a book review, a book recommendation for everyone to go home with, what book would you recommend and why?
Apart from the ones I've already sort of mentioned.
Yeah.
You want to recap them? I can skip this.
Yeah, sure. So Don't Skip Out on Me by Willie Vlortin. I'd definitely recommend that. I'd recommend Mornings in Jenin by Susan Abelhauer. I would recommend a new one that I've just finished called Unraveling by Preeti Nair. That was really good. I'd recommend the one that you told me to read recently. It was about Christian-Palestinian stories.
Behind You is the Sea?
Yes, Behind You is the Sea by Susan Muaid, something like that.
Something like that.
We'll slap it on the
But
screen.
Susan M, let's just say.
Susan M.
That was really great. I think if you're struggling to get back into reading, I'd say that was a good one because it's short stories. Every single story is interesting. You jump straight to the juicy part. Which is another reason why I love short stories. It's hard to sort of recommend a book without knowing what people enjoy.
Yeah.
So I'd say that those few are like solid, can't go wrong type stories. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And anything you want to say?
Yeah, so you talked about your upcoming festival. When would that be? Promote yourself. Anything that you else want to share?
We're still sort of
Go for it.
trying to sort out dates because again, like it's almost a year in the future. It's hard to know what everyone's plans will be.
Yeah.
But I think approximately it'll be around the same time. So it'll be at the start of September. So it'll be on a Saturday, most likely. We haven't decided where yet, but it will be in central London somewhere. It will be a whole day thing. So as soon as we have a date, we'll put it out there so people can save the date.
Yeah.
And I really hope that you guys can come.
Yeah, definitely.
We're always taking like recommendations of what you'd want to hear or anyone you'd want to see.
Yeah.
But we hope to make it like bigger and better. Like we had a few learning experiences, but it was very small things. And I think that kind of is just a testament to that amount of prep that went into it. So we were overall really, really happy with how it went. Yeah. And we got some really good feedback. Like one feedback, I think something that someone said that I think you mentioned earlier is like, what's something someone said that kind of stuck with you? And it was one of our regulars, and he basically said that Candid has changed his life. Oh, wow. Because it's brought him into like a community that he didn't have before, and it's just been amazing. And it's allowed us to expand his horizons. He's read things that he normally wouldn't. Even when he's read things that he hasn't enjoyed, he still enjoyed discussing it. Yeah. And meeting authors and all sorts. So I think that was something that when we heard, it was just really, really touching. Yeah. And it just helps to remind us that the work that we're doing is important in its own way. You know, it might feel superficial sometimes when we're thinking about like pictures and likes and YouTube and whatever, but you know, there is real impact
Yeah, when
behind
you hear
it.
somebody saying that, that must be beautiful.
Exactly.
you
It
know?
was like we couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we feel very, very lucky that we get to do it with each other and that we genuinely enjoy it and have fun while doing it. So it doesn't feel like a job. And maybe one day we can make money from it and everyone
Yeah.
can leave their full-time jobs. That would be the dream.
Yeah,
But
of course.
you know, we've been going for 8 years now.
Yeah.
So here's to another
Another
8 and more.
yeah,
You know?
8 more, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful way to round that off. And I hope you guys definitely get to a point where like you become the staple that people go to get their, you know, like a book's coming out or has come out and people go, okay, let's see what they thought. Because that's what I'll be doing. It will save me a lot of time as I found out. And I hope that it can be a global thing, a massive thing. And I wish you guys all the best because you guys definitely deserve it. And thank you so much for coming down.
No, thank you
and
so much
coming
for
through.
having me. Like, I'm a big fan of your podcast.
No, I appreciate that.
So, you know, I just want to remind people that if you want to listen to a couple of guys who actually deserve their mic,
No.
aren't just yapping about women all the time.
Sometimes.
Yeah, hearing the mic
You
should
know?
be expensive these days.
Exactly, it should be more expensive for men. Like they should have a license to rent.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I always recommend your podcast. I think it's great. I think it's just really good. Just chat and you feel like friends. And even my husband was like, it feels like people that I would want to chill with.
Yeah,
Like,
wow.
yeah,
That's a big
so
honor.
yeah.
Oh, we're,
Keep
like,
going, guys.
We'll clip
really
that as the
appreciate
whole
that.
episode.
Yeah, really, that's just the episode. Yeah, really appreciate that because like talking about community building, like one of the biggest, like we're coming to the end of our season right now, and one of the biggest themes that we want to start pushing the upcoming seasons is community, and potentially building, like you said, our own book clubs and bring your husband, tell him
Yeah.
you better come along then. It'll
Yeah,
be-
yeah,
it'll be great to-
100%.
Yeah, because you guys definitely created the safe space for people to come to and just discuss anything, you know? And I feel like that's kind of what it is. I feel like there was somebody that said it in the festival highlight video that you guys had. And she was like, especially reading is like 3 different occasions. It's like picking the book out for yourself, reading the book, and then discussing it is all like 3 different events, you know? And like, you might have been like, I hate this book the whole way through. And then you hear somebody saying why it was the best book ever. And you're like, oh, wow, this is a different thing, you know?
That's the fun thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, creativity is what we push, and it's all subjective. And the more people that you can get in, and the different views you can get, is
I see a
what makes it
collab
amazing.
between Candid and you guys in the future.
No,
When you
definitely.
start your book club. So
That's what
'cause
we're
we always
working
want-
hard for.
we always want more men to read as well. But it's hard, like when men see just a group of women,
Yeah.
they have their preconceptions about what that's going to be like. So,
Yeah, and that's why we started as well. It's same reasons
Yeah,
as well.
literally, yeah,
yeah, so I really look forward to you starting your book club.
definitely.
And we're here if you guys need any advice.
Yeah, no,
But I
absolutely.
know that you'll smash it, so I look forward to your first
It's
event.
always good to have
Appreciate
advice.
that.
I'll send the husband to do recon for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Come back and tell us what it was like. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And like I said, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
And a massive round of applause
To the max, straight to the max.
straight to the mics. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace out.
That's it.